Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Hey, it's after lunch. I got to get you pumped up here. I know that this is the time of the afternoon when you want to snooze, especially if you're a student. I'm John Mixon, and I'm the executive director of FAFSA. I've been around education in Florida for many, many years. I was a school teacher in Gainesville, social studies, and in Chiefland, and then I became assistant principal in Lake Butler at a middle school and principal of an elementary. Was in Pinellas County as assistant superintendent and then deputy commissioner for education under both Ralph Turlington and Betty Castor. So you can count the years. It's been many, many years that I've been around education. You know, people say that we're facing a revolution in technology. Well, it's certainly not an evolution, and it's beyond a revolution. I would say that it is a mega event in education. Technology is changing the course of human history, and we call it technology, but it's a result of a invention that occurred many years ago called the microchip. It was the smallest part of technology. Without the microchip, we didn't have digital clocks and digital radios and TVs, things that we take for granted, garage door openers and cars that back into parking spaces by themselves and run themselves and start themselves. And all the apps, the thousands and thousands and thousands of apps, one of which I learned about on the way here, the app that provides you the information on where the highway patrol is sitting on the interstate. Wave, I believe it's called. Waze, I'm all into that. But see, without the microchip, we wouldn't have had any of that. The little microchip, also in education, allowed us to aggregate, to compare, to analyze, to evaluate, and even predict student performance. It certainly changed the way medicine has operated in the United States. It's changed the way finance operates in the United States. The stock exchange is not what you learned about when you were a young person in school. It's so automated today. A minor change causes things to buy and sell, causes the markets to collapse. Technology has really changed our world. Now, in human behavior, we're looking at the application of technology to teaching and learning. Actually, we're caught up in the vortex of technology and education. For some, it's right depressing. It's called pay for performance, and it's based upon student outcomes. And those outcomes are predictable outcomes. We have standards. And now, through technology, they can measure where a student is and how their learning gains occur. And we now know in many instances how they occur and what you have to do to get them to occur. And technology is part of all of that. Technology costs a lot of money. In Florida, we weren't willing to invest the money. Fortunately, we had a great senator from Pasco County who has decided to put the effort into providing money for technology in public schools. It wasn't that politicians thought we ought to have the money. The truth of it is that we're in a generation that came up with technology, and now they have children. And they understand it, they use it in their workplace, and they not only anticipate that their children will have technology in schools, they expect it. And politicians resonate to that. So last year we got $40 million for technology. This year we'll get at least 80, and hopefully we'll get $100 million for technology in the state of Florida. And Florida isn't the only state that is doing that. South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, New York, they're all putting money into technology. New York passed a $2 billion bond issue by 60% of the voters. Now, folks in New York don't vote for taxes. They send their retirees to Florida so they don't have to pay taxes. He's from New York, so $2 billion for technology in a state that is a little larger than the state of Florida, but not all that larger. And then you hear a lot of moaning and groaning about pay for performance based on student gains. We're not the only state. We may have been the leader that started it, but if you look around the Southeast, Georgia is into it, Alabama is into it, South Carolina is doing it, Tennessee has pay for performance. So everywhere in America, they are looking at pay for performance based upon student gains. And those gains would not have been able to be measured if we didn't have application of technology. So we're not alone in that. We did notice a gap at FAFSA. The school administrators, we listened to our administrators, we listened to our superintendents. This is a superintendent. He looks like a superintendent. He's distinguished. You're going to hear from him in a minute. My good friend Kurt Browning from Pasco. But they were all saying, you know, we expect, they passed a law that said by 2015 we're going to be digitally converted in the state of Florida. And every student is going to be using digital means for teaching and for learning. And we looked around and we said, now, what kind of problem does that pose for the average teacher? You see, there are thousands of apps out there that a teacher can use for any given subject. Some of them are made by commercial companies. Some of them are made by people in their bedrooms or in their garages. But there are great apps. The problem for the teacher is if you're teaching civics in the 9th grade, is finding the apps, finding the resources, finding the lectures, finding Library of Congress resources and things that can apply to the standards that we have to teach in the state of Florida. It all goes back to learning gains and the standards. So FAFSA said, why don't we get a grant and let's get some districts together that would like to resolve this issue. We had CPALMs. Everybody in here familiar with CPALMs? Raise your hand if you're familiar. Most everybody in here familiar. CPALMs is a great tool. What we wanted to do was develop a CPALMs that's on steroids for every course that we have in the state of Florida. And I thought when we started that ESOL would be a separate standalone. But when we got teachers together from the 5 partnering districts, which were Pasco, Pinellas, Polk, Hernando, and Citrus, when we got those 40 to 60 supervisors and teachers together, they said, no, we want to integrate that into the curriculum. We don't want it to be standalone. And now we're looking at doing ESE, and we're looking at doing career technical as part of this project. So we had to name it. We named it Avenue for Success. It's a partnership with Helios Foundation. The 5 districts that started with us, we're starting with 2 grades, the 8th and 9th grade, the transition grades. And we've had teachers working all year to develop the prototype that you're going to see today for 8th and 9th grade courses. Some of those teachers are here in front of the room. If you were part of it, raise your hand. Raise your hand. There we go. Avenue for Success. The A, she's telling me what the A stands for. Means aligned. Nothing like having an employee with you, that tells you everything. Aligned. It's aligned to the standards. It's aligned to the expectations. It's aligned to the subject area and the grade level that a person is teaching for every course in those 2 grades that we've done this year. V stands for vetted. The problem for the average teacher is if you're going to be teaching social studies or science or language arts, is finding the digital materials that enhance what you're teaching that causes students to be engaged in the curriculum that you're using. And to do that, teachers are having to spend hundreds of hours getting ready to use finding the right materials that enhance and are correlated with our standards. So this group has been vetting those materials to ensure that it does that. And finally, the E stands for embraced. The teachers who are here are embracing it. We know that the students and the teachers who use it around the state of Florida will also embrace it. This project is hand in glove with the software that teachers are going to be needing. We're going to be K through 12, ELL, ESE, and Career Tech when this project is finished in a year. And we're going for our next round of funding. But we're a long ways away from that little microchip that started all of this. And the difference is embracing the future and making the future what we want it to be. Our panel today is going to tell us about part of the future that we have. The next presenter is going to be Superintendent Kurt Browning from Pasco County. I'll tell you something about Kurt. He was born in Dade City. He's lived in Pasco most all his life. He went to school for a short time in Tampa and then moved back to Pasco County. He's a local boy. He was our Secretary of State for the state of Florida and is a great leader in that district, and we're really pleased that he chose to participate in this. He'll be followed, or will the next person in line that will actually go first, and that's Dan Koch from Citrus County. And Dan went to school in New York, grew up in New York, married a girl that had family in Citrus County. I asked him, did you just throw a dart and come to Florida? Because who the heck would pick Citrus County to move to? Dan married a girl that had family there. She got a job and he got a job, and he's doing an outstanding job. He's actually going to demonstrate this for you. Laura Rulerson, close, right? Lang is, I'm going to promote her. She's Senior Director of Science in Pasco County. She might be a supervisor, or she may have no title. God knows. She's going to tell us about the experience we had in developing this and why it's important not only for science, but all the courses that we're doing. And then we have, in addition, we have Card. Help me. Connie. Connie is also a teacher in Pasco County. She teaches math. She's been teaching a short time. She used to own a bookstore and went into education after owning a bookstore. She was with Johnson & Johnson for many years before that. Then we'll finish up with Kurt, and we'll have a time for Q&A. So with that, I'm going to let Dan come up, or Dan, if you want to, you can do it right from there. And
well, thank you, Mr. Mixon. Is this on? Okay. Mr. Mixon introduced me, but a little bit more of a background on me. This is my 5th year in Florida, and it's also my 5th year teaching. And we're in the 3rd year at my school, Citrus County Schools. We're in Citrus Springs Middle School, and we're in the 3rd year of us having iPads for all 2 grade levels, 7th and 8th grade. Go home with the students and they come back to campus. And so we're in the 3rd year of that. And if you rewind back to the 1st year that we implemented this, we were really excited. All the teachers were very excited. We had each teacher was issued an iPad, and we were excited to use them. And we all had we had one PD that I remember, and it was everybody in the same room. And we were like, all right, everybody go to the App Store and just go to the education section and download whatever app is in your content area, and then we're going to share out. So everybody was downloading apps. I think there was a group over here that downloaded an app that, like, if you point it at somebody, you can make them blow up or something like that. And there was other apps that were they were a lot of fun, but they were, when we kind of reconvened after that, it was, all right, this is an awesome device, and it's really fun, but where do I start? Where do I go from here? Because we're all brand new to this device, and we want to use it, but we don't know really where to go. So when I was asked to be part of this project, I kind of put myself back in those shoes, and I remember day one, where do I go? Where do I go from here? I have this awesome device. So being able to have a course on iTunes U, if you guys want to look, it's over here. For each subject area, my subject area was 8th grade, language arts, and I worked on it with Lauren Squared over there, Miss Lauren Pantoja and Lauren Fennick. This is what I wish I had when I had that year one moment where I was like, where do I do, what do I do, what's on day one, how do I implement this technology? So if you go into our course here, and this is just a prototype course, you'll see our course description, and here's a couple of our instructors. And my favorite part is when you go to our post section, and this is what I mean when I say I wish I had this in my first year. If you go through each of these sections, and this is actually mirrored in the language arts standards for 8th grade, you have all of your different course standards here. You have reading for key ideas and details, reading for craft and structure, reading for integration of knowledge, and so on. We have the writing standards in there and the language standards also. And each standard is broken down by a substandard, and if you're a teacher and you're a member of this course, what you can do is you can go in, and let's say I want to look at the reading integration of ideas, knowledge and ideas. So here's a course summary that you can look the stuff up on CPALMs. You'll see a course description, you'll see a standard description, and what you'll be able to do is go in here, and as assignments that have been posted here, if you're a teacher and you're wondering what app can I use to teach this one specific standard, you could go in and you can say, you know what, I am going to download this app called Zaption. I'm going to use that in my classroom because this actually helps me with what I'm planning to do with my students. Or I'm going to use this resource. I'm going to use the Pages app to have students demo, or excuse me, I'm going to have the students write me a draft in Pages. If I go to another section here, vocabulary acquisition, there's a whole, and some of these have, the way that we kind of did this course was, if I'm a teacher and we're trying to look at this through the lens of a teacher, if I've never used this before, can I go in and on day one implement this technology when all my kids are probably one step ahead of me? Because I was talking to my assistant principal the other day, and he said, you know, in our first year, we all thought we were experts when we had those devices, and then we were like, well, we were. And then after the first day, I wasn't an expert anymore. The kids knew more than I did. So if you go through, and a lot of the other courses are built this way, you can go through and let's say you're looking at Standard 8 for speaking and listening. Here's another one. And I realize I'm going through these very, very quickly, but I want to give my other panelists a chance to talk about their course. This is the ELA 8th grade course. It's really just part of the reason that I like this is because it's vetted by teachers. We all sat down as a group. We were discussing sample lessons that we have done in class together, and we were like, well, here's a problem. How can I improve this process with the device? And it was really that kind of organic discussion that we had that made it really successful implementing it into the course. So excuse me, can you tell I'm a little nervous up here? I went to FETC last year, and all I had to do was go to sessions. So, I mean, I'm up here now, so that'll teach me, right? No, without further ado, I guess, I'm going to introduce Laura Lang. She's going to come up here, and she's going to talk a little bit about her science course and sort of the differences in some of the standards implementation that we're trying to get with this course. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dan. I think it's on. Just really excited about this project that we were asked to do as a compilation of districts were pulled together to really work on this. What we thought on the inception was, you know, we'll get this knocked out in a couple weekends, you know, on our extra time. But once you really got into it, and once you started looking at all the resources, there was a plethora of resources, really, that was either loosely aligned or, you know, or strongly aligned. But we had to really go through each one and decide which one. From my lens, I've been a teacher in the classroom for many years, and then now I help support Pasco County with science, and so I've been doing that the district-wide for a few years now, and just being able to develop curriculum, have resources available for teachers that really meet the needs of learners is a critical piece of this project. And so I was really excited to be able to be part of that. And I worked with Beth Long over there for the 8th grade, and we have some biology teachers also worked on it in the 7th grade comprehensive science as we were working on that transitional year for students for science. But just the amount of resources, it took so long to really go through one by one and make sure that it was the best resource that was most aligned to those standards. So in science, when we develop the course, we try to really look at it, again, from the planning piece as the PLCs or your teachers working together in your schools as a plan, and go through with the 5E model, because in science, that's what makes most sense for instruction, is engaging students as they go through and they explore, and then they have to explain, they elaborate, and they evaluate. So going through those resources as you would identify the best resources for standards, looking at them from the lens of the 5E, and then finding the best apps or the best digital resources available to really help make most impact for that standard. So it was really exciting. I think with this resource, the teachers it's just unlimited because it's vetted. This is also a resource that's continually going to be updated. Even going on to CPOMs, you'll see some links that are not really live anymore, and you have to keep going through. But having this collection that has already been curated for you is really valuable for you to use in the classroom. So, Connie, you want to talk about math a little bit?
So my name is Connie Card. It's interesting to note that Mr. Mixon remembered my last name because I do use cards in my classroom, and so it is easy to remember. And Mr. Browning probably could tell you a story or two as well, but maybe later. I want to just share that as a classroom teacher, I teach 7th grade math. This is a tremendous resource for me and has already helped me in my classroom. I have been vetting all of these resources. I like to think of myself as like a curator in an art museum, and I am going and finding the best art that I can find to use in my classroom, the ones I like, and those are what are being placed in these courses. I use them with my kids. I make sure they like them before it goes in the course, and so it's totally vetted by me and my fellow contributors, as well as students already. So my students are already embracing it. So I know that it meets all the needs that we need, and it is so easy to use. I do use CPOMs a lot, but I like this better because I think it's easier to use, and I like it better because it's all digital. I'm lucky enough to have iPads in my classroom, and so any digital need, right now I'm going out and really searching for everything I can, but I don't think every teacher should have to do that. So we're making it easy for other teachers to do. And that's really my main message for you today. Beyond that, I too am looking for a promotion. So I'd like to hand it over to the greatest superintendent in the state of Florida, Mr. Brown.
There you go. Well, thank you, Connie. And if we had time, I would share with you, well, real quickly, I was walking through her classroom one day, and she was using playing cards in her instruction, and she was just so proud of this. And I just happened to be walking through there, and she's using these cards and how to do some mathematical whatever you do in your classroom, and the trick didn't work. And she said, "Oh, let me try this again. I know it's going to work." And she goes over it not once, but twice and 3 times, and still couldn't get it to work. So the reason I remember that is her last name's Card, and she messed up a card trick. So let me just, but I appreciate my classroom teachers. I appreciate the teachers in our district as well as teachers throughout this district. How many are classroom teachers? Show of hands. You guys have tough jobs. I made the comment to somebody out in the hallway, and I make this comment all the time. I'm not sure I could be a classroom teacher. It's tough. It's hard enough to run a school district, but I think it's even tougher to manage a classroom. I really do. With all the pressures and associated things that you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. I want to thank FASA and Apple and Helios, first and foremost, for their partnership in coming up with this idea and then really making it happen. A lot of times we sit around tables and we come up with all these great and grandiose ideas and plans, but then they just peter out. Nothing ever happens. And that's not necessarily the case with this one. Now, I'm taking a risk today. I've been out of high school about 40 years. And technology is all new to me, so I am taking my notes off of an Apple iPad, which is totally unusual for me, but I figured since I was at a technology conference, I probably need to do that. Now, however, I'm going to wrap myself out and let you know that I also have my comments in paper next to me. So I'm not even going to look at them. I'm just going to do the best I can with the iPad. I want to just talk a little bit, as John said, we had assembled a team between 40 and 60 administrators, district staffs, and teachers to start putting the meat on this project. And they were from Pasco, Hernando, Pinellas, Polk, and Citrus counties. And they have been able to launch 17 courses, or will, in April. With 6 different subjects in the fields of ELA, math, science, and social studies. I want to give you just real briefly the perspective from a superintendent. I walk through classrooms all the time. I would much rather be in a classroom or a school any day than staying at the district office. And I stay in touch with what actually goes on in our schools by not just hearing about it, but actually getting out in classrooms and schools, talking to principals and custodians and food nutrition service folks and teachers and everybody at those schools. And I think it helps me become a better superintendent. What was fascinating to me about this project was the fact that, as probably already been stated, but from my perspective, is that teachers have tough jobs. The expectation of teachers today is that you've got to be ready to perform when those kids get there. And with the expectation, with technology being what it is, I've said this all along, I think we've done a huge disservice by saying we want to be a 21st century school district. We want to infuse technology into our classrooms and our instructional practices, and yet we can't find the money to provide the hardware, much less the infrastructure to support that, and the PD, the professional development that goes along with training our teachers, training our administrative staff on how you do just that. So teachers don't have a lot of time. Teachers don't have a lot of time to go looking for resources. And anything that we can do to make that, I'll use the word easier, for our teachers, where they can make better use of their time, and they can go out and look at this iTunes U and look at different subjects, different courses, and be able to pull those resources down that, and I think Dan used the word vetted. John used the word vetted. These are almost like good housekeeping seal of approval on these resources, knowing that you can trust these resources when you go in there. How do you know you can trust them? Because teachers have looked at these resources. We haven't just taken resources and put them out there on iTunes U. That would have been the easy thing to do, but that's not what happened. This team has worked and will continue to work to improve that. The other thing is they're aligned with the standards. They're aligned with the standards, and you know all about the standards and how important it is, and that's what drives almost everything that we do in our school districts across Florida. Some of the things that's also included the assessment resources, as well as the integration of ELL supports. It has those pieces embedded in there, so you also have access to that. Ongoing plans. We will, I think as Laura said, continue to look at the resources that are out there. Sometimes you have apps that don't work anymore. You have links that are broken. Continually looking and updating, finding newer resources, more up-to-date resources, and then continually updating this process. After our launch in April of 15, FAFSA will continue the work with the second phase, which will be completing the middle and high school courses that aren't yet created. This is I think, an overly ambitious project. I will tell you, not to diminish what's happened so far, but when you think about what has happened so far, this is incredible stuff. This is incredible, where teachers can click on this, they can pull up the course, they can see the resources, and they can use them right there. Third phase will be focused on curating content, digital content, to support elementary students. And then finally, as John said, the last phase will be looking at the career and technical piece. Career and technical education is huge, getting huger in Florida. It's getting bigger, and thankfully we're putting more emphasis on career and technical education. So this is a great project, and I just again want to thank FAFSA and Helios and Apple and the teacher teams from the different districts that helped with this. I am sure that the teams and FAFSA are open to ideas, suggestions. So if you're not in one of those 5 districts, this is just not for these 5 districts. This is for our districts. And we want to make teachers' jobs a little bit easier. We want you to be better teachers, and we believe that this resource goes a long way in doing that. So I'm going to turn it back over to John, and I think he has a little something to share with us. Thank you.
All right. We have just a few minutes to go, and I want to liken this to Iron Chef. Who's watched Iron Chef or Cutthroat? Raise your hand. You know what it's like on TV. These 60 people were chefs. They were given the refrigerator that was full of gourmet food and all the attributes to make a wonderful meal. And you know what? These folks were too. They had assessments to put in their cart. They had websites to put in their cart. They had the Florida standards to go by, to put in their cart. They had videos to put in their cart. And they had apps to put in their cart. And finally, they had books to refer to put in their cart. Their cart was overflowing. They have come up. Now, just like on Iron Chef, there's Cutthroat. Have you seen Cutthroat, Chef? You need to watch it, because in Cutthroat, they throw obstacles in your way. We have obstacles: time, professional development, students who don't care, parents who are not engaged. We have obstacles, but they have overcome the obstacles to have a product that they, with a click, a teacher has the resources that they need for the course that they're teaching, that's aligned to the standards, the course, and the grade level that they're in. We couldn't have done it without our partners, the school districts he mentioned. When we do this next time, we're going to have more than 20 districts participating. So with that, are there any questions? And then we have the wrap-up. Any questions? We're here to answer questions, all these folks in the front. So with that, would you give us the wrap-up, please?
Thank you. I'm Michelle White. I'm the Director of Communications for the Florida Association of School Administrators. I just wanted to give you a little bit of a quick wrap-up. We have talked about our next steps and where we're going. These truly are living courses. The process that we're going through will have the teachers and supervisors that have already been participating continue to add content as they find new things. But we're asking also for feedback. And so those that are using it can actually say, you know what, I have a great resource for civics or language arts, and this is what I'm using. My students are loving it. They can submit those, and we can add them to the course as well. We switched here to a different iPad to just show you that these are live. These are the courses that are, when you go to iTunes U, these are the courses that are available. They will be up for a short period of time just for this FETC launch. They're still in draft form, as you'll see on the covers, but when we do our big launch in April, they'll be live. We'll have 17 courses at least. Those are but they'll be covering everything from ELA, math, science, social studies, digital media, and assessments. There's an entire section devoted to assessments, which are which I think is just fabulous. And within there is the ELL component in each course. We would encourage you to come by and try out these courses with us, get in depth, talk to the teachers that have helped create them at our booth, which is just out and down to the left in front of the S220 rooms. So we hope that you'll come by and ask us any questions. And with that,
We're-
we'll end for the day, but thank you.